I want to invite our first storyteller up. There is a time clock in my line of sight that all the farmers will be able to see. And I know you all have great stories, but you also have your time limits, so just a short reminder. So I am so excited in welcoming Lynsey Gammon, the farm director at Gracie's Farm at the Lodge at Blue Sky. Give it up. This farm is a part of the Auberge Resorts collection, and it's at the part of this hotel that we're convening right now. Lynsey leads an organic, regenerative, female-led farm focused on soil health, biodiversity, and supplying the lodge with seasonal produce in Wanship, Utah. Give her a huge round of applause. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. So, I grew up in the mountains surrounding Lake Tahoe. Super lucky. But even more so because my grandmother, my nanny, lived right down the road from me. And every day I could walk down to her house, and she would feed me a snack, and then she would usher me outside into her garden. And this is where she taught me the art and love of growing food in the mountains. You see, she was Italian, and she was a lover of food, and she was never happier than when her entire family was seated around her table devouring her ravioli. She was my true North Star. She was the woman from whom I learned not only how to garden, but how to be a loving, present mother, a strong and independent woman, and a keeper of tradition. She came from a line of farmers back in Italy. And when her family immigrated over to the United States, they settled in the Central Valley of California. And they just picked up right where they left off. But this time, as raisin farmers. But not my nanny. She instead moved to the mountains. She moved to Lake Tahoe at 6,500 feet, where growing food seemed to be almost impossible. But somehow, she did it. And she could never really leave behind the love of growing food and the joy and love that it gave to her and the connection with the land and her history. Because like so many women before her, farming was her ancestry. It ran through her veins. And like so many women were historically integral to farming and farming practice. You know, from the beginning of time, from hunter-gatherer societies to the small family farms, to growing food through the World War II with the Women's Land Army, women have sustained growing food and sustained their families and communities from the beginning of time. Sorry, excuse me. So, you know, she taught me everything that I know. And when standardization and mechanization came into farming, women were pushed out and men kind of took over. And women went into the home and took on a more domestic role. But they maintained their culture and their ancestry of farming and growing food through maintaining gardens. They grew in their backyards and on small plots of land, always sort of keeping that cultural history close to their heart, just like my nanny did in the 70s and 80s back in that garden in Tahoe. And like I said earlier, she made that garden central to my youth and to my childhood and my education, and without knowing it, to my future. She taught me how to sow the seeds and turn the soil, and she taught me how to plant peas. And when those vines would kind of climb up that makeshift trellis, she taught me how to harvest a pod. And then I would taste it. And in those moments with her, I learned what true food and real food grown by hand with care and love truly meant and what it truly tasted like and what it meant to my soul. But like so many women, I didn't know there was a place for me in farming. So I went off to college and I got a graduate school degree and I did a whole other career before going back. But I always kind of was kept at a distance from the soil, but I always kind of gardened when I could, and I ate fresh and local when I could, and I carried that lineage somewhere within me. And until one day, I was standing in my garden in Salt Lake City, and I was pregnant with my first daughter, and I realized that this was where I spent all of my time. It's where I felt most myself. And it was in that moment, in that quiet, when I heard the voices of my ancestors. It was like a whisper, and then it was a roar. This is where you belong. And in that moment, the flickering torch was reignited and passed down. and I returned to my roots, and I jumped back into farming. And I wasn't alone at that time, because communities started talking about the industrialization of agriculture and the impact that it had on the world. And women in that momentum started returning to agriculture, bringing care and nurture and reconnection back to the land. But the barriers to entry for women are really high, and they have been for a long time. Because of cultural and structural and financial barriers, women have a disproportionately harder time starting a farm business than their male counterparts. And it's in that gap between possibility and passion that I have found my place. After building my own farm for years and then creating this community anchor at Gracie's farm where I farm today, I realized and noticed that the gap for women and the opportunities for women did not exist, and it was really frustrating. And so I created a space to train and mentor the next generation of young women farmers. Just like my Nani did for me, she passed down the love of food and of growing food, I now get to do the same. And in those moments where I get to reflect and sit in this piece of land, I think about that mountain garden, and I think about my grandmother, and I hear the voices, and I think about all of those women who came before her, and then I look at the women with whom I'm working today, and then I think about the women who will come after me, namely my daughters, because they now have a really important job on the farm, a super special one. It's planting the snap peas. And every year I watch them, and they drop the seeds in the soil, and they cover them, and they wait for those vines to crawl up the trellis so that they too can really appreciate and taste the texture and sweetness of a snap pea. And in those moments, I hear my Nani speaking to me, and she's reminding me that this work, the work of growing food, of growing community, and growing women, is exactly where I belong. Thank you.
Amazing. You're beautiful. I'm crying. Thank you so much.